earlier this week, the Darlington Nurses won a landmark case against their health trust after a transgender row. 8 nurses at Darlington Memorial Hospital brought a claim against County Durham and Darlington NHS Foundation Trust after a biological male who identifies as a woman was allowed to use female changing facilities. In a judgment handed down, the judge ruled that the NHS had violated the nurses' dignity and that the trust's conduct amounted to harassment. He said allowing the trans colleague to share changing facilities had created a hostile, intimidating, humiliating and degrading environment. I am delighted to say that 2 of the Darlington nurses, Bethany Hutchinson and Lisa Lockie, join me now. A massive round of applause. Rightly so, because we have been following this case now for more than a year, and now the judgment has come in, and first of all, it must feel incredibly good to finally get to this point.
Yeah, it does indeed. We feel completely vindicated, and we're elated, we're delighted, yeah. So,
and Bethany, for people who haven't seen the entirety of this case, we can just do a very quick sort of summation of what happened. I believe it started in 2023. Suddenly, although the policy was enacted in 2019, but because of COVID in 2023, it became apparent that this biological male was changing in the same place as women, and gradually this kind of became aware through the rest of your unit, right?
Yeah, just a lot of conversations between people. Are you aware there's a trans person using our changing room? And people expressing their discomfort to the point that eventually Beth went and spoke to one of our managers who took it to a higher manager who said that because of the inclusivity of the NHS, there was nothing we could do about it.
This is it, because that was actually false law. Essentially, what we know from the Supreme Court is that women means biological women and always has done according to law. So they somehow, somewhere, mention no names, got this idea that women meant people also transing. And I also want to point out for anybody who isn't familiar with this story, is that the man involved, biological male, he's not had any surgery. He was walking around in boxer shorts. I believe he had visible facial hair. This isn't like some people tuning in might be going, oh, this is someone who's had all the surgery and presents as a female. And that wasn't the case. This was just a guy in his boxer shorts.
That's right, yeah, who has recently got married.
And he's recently to a female. Yeah. Wow. So, and some of the things that were kind of said as well, I think, Lisa, he said to some people like, oh, haven't you got why aren't you getting changed? Which is like if I was in a male changing room and the guy said, why haven't you got changed yet 3 times to me, I'd be like, what is going on here?
Yeah,
like, that's not how people usually speak.
And that happened to our friend Karen, who has got a history of sexual abuse from being a child, which was really, really distressing for her. So, but there were a lot of incidents where people just felt uncomfortable, to the point where you sort of felt uncomfortable even walking in there, thinking, if I'm in a state of undress, is he going to walk in? You know, it just felt uncomfortable for everybody, I would say.
Yeah, and the point is that it doesn't necessarily matter whether this person presented as a female or not. This is against the law. This was you have the right as women to be able to undress in a space with only other women. So when you went to the trust and the management, you were saying that they were dismissal. I believe they even sort of said, just be kind and go to training.
Yes, so our ward manager was summoned to a meeting, and in that meeting she was told that the members of staff that had raised the concern were to be educated. They needed to broaden their mindset, compromise. There was an offer of Rose Henderson actually educating us.
So the person involved actually being the person to say, ignore my boxer shorts and my beard.
Yes.
And also, I believe he commented on someone's breasts. Again, that's not great behaviour anywhere.
No.
So you were told that this, to be re-educated. You also, I understand, were asked to change elsewhere or given that option?
So we were given our manager's old office was converted into a locker room for us, which initially we had no lockers in there. There was a chair, so we were having to just leave our clothes on the floor. It opened onto a corridor opposite a side room. So it used to be a case of you would go in there and you would sort of stand, if the door was going to open, you would kind of be ready to jump behind it, because if you were stood there in just your bra, you were kind of like, uncovered and exposed. So it was uncomfortable. Eventually they did put some lockers in there for us, but there was only half a dozen. And for the amount of staff using it, it was nowhere near enough. But also it wasn't... It was, because it had been an office, it was supposed to then, it needed some work doing to make it like fire safe as a changing room, and they didn't do that. And it came out in court through a bunch of emails that we read that one of our directors of nursing had said they couldn't justify spending I think it was about £9,000 on the fire safety work that needed to be done.
So they couldn't spend the £9,000 on that, but of course they could spend a huge amount of taxpayers' money on fighting this in court.
Using the internet without a VPN, a virtual private network, is a bit like taking to the road without car insurance. All it takes is one unlucky moment to cost you a lot of cash. This video's sponsor is Private Internet Access. They are the VPN to help keep you safe. Click the link in the description below to find out why over 30 million people have downloaded PIA to protect themselves online. A virtual private network is an app that hides your IP address and helps keep your data private. When you're browsing the internet at home, you give up a large amount of data to businesses, to shops, and indeed to social media giants too. Hackers have the ability to steal your personal data with ease, including sensitive information such as passwords, keystrokes, and even your personal photos. Private Internet Access helps protect your personal data by encrypting your internet connection to keep your data out of the hands of cyber criminals. And it's not just hackers either to be concerned about. Information can be censored too. When Canada passed their C18 bill, social media giants decided to ban news content on their platforms. But PIA can protect your ability to consume the news and content you love. Private Internet Access is available for Windows users, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and you can use one PIA subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices. And we've got a huge GB News discount for you too. Click the link in this video's description and you'll get a massive 83% off PIA. That's under £2 a month, the price of a coffee, and you'll get an extra 4 months completely free on top. Also, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee too. Visit piavpn.com/GB News to start protecting yourself digitally today.
Now, the thing that I don't really understand is, once the Supreme Court ruled that women means biological women, why at that point, when the law was settled, or why didn't the trust settle the case?
Yeah, we can't understand that either,
no.
Can we? I mean, for us, it's not a complex issue, is it? Sex is immutable, it's binary, and he should never have been in there anyway. And they were in breach of other regulations as well. You know, that we were entitled to have, men and women are entitled to have facilities that are for men and women. And I think it's the Workplace Act of 1992 or something. I'm not clued up on it completely, but that was a piece of legislation that already was in place.
Yeah, and people also forget the reality of your day jobs, which is you're nurses, you're doing these incredibly long shifts, you're having to change fully into different garments. Have you been working through this entire process? Has that been, I'm imagining that's quite awkward when your bosses are essentially being taken to court.
It is, but I would just add that we've never really seen any senior management that we've been dealing with, and our ward manager has been very supportive to us. But going into work, we wouldn't be very likely to see anybody from HR or from the directors board. Very unlikely to see any of those people. So it kind of has carried on as normal to a certain extent. Obviously, we're carrying the weight of it with us, but it has kind of carried on as normal.
Which is crazy, and they haven't Have they been in contact with you yet?
No.
Management?
No. They have hardly contacted.
Never.
They didn't send you flowers?
No flowers, no apology, nothing.
No apology. I mean, because I saw a previous interview, and that's what you said you really wanted from this place.
Yeah.
A year and a half. I mean, there are two parts here. There's the initial being forced to change with the biological male, and the harassment that has now been legally proven. But there's also, of course, the process of the punishment.
Yeah.
The punishment is the process. And you've had a year and a half of court, of media. What's that been like?
It's been exhausting and also all-consuming as well. You know, there's been sleepless nights, tears. Thankfully, we've had each other to sort of, and the wonderful Christian Legal Centre as well to support us. So, you know, we have managed to get through it. But there have been times where some of us have thought, is this worth it?
What about your unions?
Oh, don't get me started. So I was with Unison, and fairly early on through the process, I emailed my union rep, and I didn't get a response. And then a month or so later, I found out he was actually going to be representing Rose. So that was frustrating. But I thought, well, I was already now in the middle of it. It was a legal case by this point, so I thought, well, OK, I've got my legal team to support me. But then they refused to let us have our legal team with us in any meetings. So I was kind of left just... So that was when we formed our own union, the Darlington Nurses Union.
Incredible, your union,
So,
the Unison did that. And have you... Well, yes.
Thank you.
But it's just as baffling that that's the whole point of joining a union is to have the protection of your work rights, your sex-based rights. Unison is 75%
women,
female, and I understand that they have put out a statement since the ruling that sort of just goes on about protecting trans rights.
Yeah.
And also, after, you know, throughout our journey, throughout this whole process, we went to meet Wes Streeting, and the story of that appeared in the Mail. And the president of Unison at the time tweeted, another politician pandering to these anti-trans bigots. Which my membership was cancelled the next day. And that was that. But I've paid into that union for 35 years.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Let's try and turn this into somewhat of a positive.
Yeah.
The reason the ruling is a landmark, of course, is because it now, even though this has been established in law, as we say, from the Supreme Court, but this is very, very clear to the NHS and to other employers. You better sort yourself out, basically, because you will be held legally viable. So do you think that is what... Is there any sign that the NHS are getting its act together?
There's no sign, but we're hopeful. We're really hopeful. Obviously, the HRC guidance needs to be rolled out, and we are urging the government to do that as soon as possible. Again, this is not a complex issue. No,
because it's been on the desk, I believe, for like 4 months now, and there's no reason for it to not just be put out there. Why do you... There are accusations that it's because of politics, appeasing trans activists.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that, definitely.
All going on.
Yeah, but it's... I mean, I said the other day I could have had a baby in the time that it's taken them to actually, since the Supreme Court ruling, to actually implement anything.
I would have had 3. That's a little joke for people who know I've got a lot of kids.
OK.
So what happens now? You've got the ruling, you've obviously got what you wanted, at least you didn't get the apology, but you did get the victory that you wanted, and I imagine it must feel somewhat validating that hopefully this will help to push sanity back into the workplace, right?
That's what we're hoping, and we're hoping that policies will be, these illegal policies will be removed across the board and into the public sector as well, because they're still there.
Well,
women and men are still being impacted by these policies.
Absolutely. Well, I'm all of all of you. Thank you so much for taking this case, because it's so sad that that's what it takes is to take these trusts to court to actually establish your rights. So thank you on behalf of anybody who believes in workers' rights and sanity and women's rights. And a big round of applause, please.
Thank you.
Statement here. On the Darlington Nurses victory, a spokesman for County Durham and Darlington NHS Foundation Trust said, "We are taking time to review the judgment carefully and will comment further once we have had the opportunity to consider it in full." Asked on Thursday when she expected to publish trans guidance, Women and Equality Secretary Bridget Phillipson said, "I hope to do that as soon as I can. We did require certain additional information from the EHRC, so that has unfortunately slowed the process. Putting together the code of practice must be in a way that is responsible and follows all the proper processes." That's what I'm doing at the moment, making sure that we get it right. So unfortunately, there's no apology to both of you. But again, thank you so much for coming in.